Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Islip Planning Board meeting for Thursday, November 12th, 2020. We're still obviously operating under COVID pandemic restrictions and operating via Zoom. If you are just joining us and you already signed up to speak for something, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom, let them know which application you're here to speak on, and they'll sign you up for it. Assuming that it's a public hearing, we ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. We'll let you know when you're approaching the 3-minute mark. If you're here for item number 1 on the agenda, Islip Terrace Fire District Substation, that item has been adjourned and will not be heard this evening. I'm just going to do a quick roll call. Mr. Frugiari?
I'm here.
Mr. Moriarty?
Present.
Mr. Bruno?
Here.
Mr. Matamore?
Here.
Perfect. We can hear everybody. I know Mr. Brown and who am I missing? Inez. Both said that they would not be here with us this evening, so we're ready to go forward. Barbara, can you hear us well? I'll take that as a yes. All right. So second item on the agenda is site plan modification public hearing, Anton Brinkman, SP 2020-035, east side of Foster Avenue, number 15 and number 19, 75 feet south of Montauk Highway, State Route 27A, Sayville, New York. Applicant requests a parking and landscape and relaxation in connection with the conversion of an existing vacant hardware store to a medical office. Good evening to the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is William Garbarino, 40 Main Street, Sayville, New York, for the applicant. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, that's great. I don't believe I could even get this thing going here. This is great. Okay. Tonight's application involves really basically two things: parking and landscape reduction in connection with changing an existing vacant building. Is occupied by a used to be a church, CO'd for a church, with the existing vacant hardware store that is on the southeast corner of Montauk and Foster Avenue in Sayville. The property is bordered as follows. To the east, there's a TD Bank. To the north, there's a shopping center. To the south is the vacant building, which the applicants plan to demolish. And then south of that, the next use would be the American Legion. And across the street to the west is a vacant paint store. In connection with this application, we are providing increase in parking if you look at the site plan, by removing the church property, we're going to be adding 9 spots. So we are going to, instead of 40, we'll have 33, and that's the extent of the relaxation. As far as the landscaping, we already have existing landscaping in the property where we're going to use the building for medical office use. And I was given covenants from proposed covenants from TANA, and really the only two that have to be addressed is we're in agreement with the covenants if the modification is made that I sent over to TANA this afternoon as to the parking. And I believe item number 2 of the covenants, which talks about superior landscaping treatment shall be installed along street frontage, is going to be changed from that. This is my son Andrew's application, and I'm pinch hitting for him tonight. So basically, if we get the changes that I put in, and if you want to discuss them, Tana, now I'm willing to discuss them with you. I thought I modified them to make them pretty general, still retaining the planning department's power to come in if there's a parking problem and ask for action by the owner. And the other thing, in speaking to Andrew this afternoon, was I asked him what was the discussion on the superior landscaping treatment, and he said that that language had been agreed to be taken out. So if those are in agreement, my clients are willing to sign the covenants, and we're willing to move ahead. I'll defer
Thank-
to the town representative now.
Thank you, Ms. Garbarino. We have nobody who signed up for this public hearing. At least I don't see anybody on my screen that has signed up for it. So I'm going to go to Mr. Gonzalez for a staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This business one zoned almost 0.7 acre site is currently comprised of 2 parcels containing 2 existing vacant commercial buildings. As Mr. Garbarino stated, the main building was home to a True Value hardware store, which the business now occupies a location on Railroad Avenue north of Montauk Highway. So that's where the business moved. The other building was originally CO'd as a church in 1993, but has had several different commercial uses throughout the years, but is currently vacant. The proposal is to demolish the smaller commercial building and provide additional parking as shown on the site plan on the screen, while reutilizing the previous hardware store for a medical office and updating that existing parking lot. Per the current parking requirements for the town, 1 stall is required per 150 square feet for a retail use, as it is required for a medical office. So the calculation is the same for the town code. There is technically no intensification in use based on those numbers, as the building is staying the same size. The building is not increasing in size at all. However, the site is still technically deficient based on the overall number of 40 stalls required and 33 provided. The amount of stalls will increase from approximately 19 I was able to count, based on looking at the site. There would have been 35 provided. However, per ADA requirements, each independent parking lot must provide ADA parking. So we had the applicant's design professional revise the plan and fix that issue. So they did lose 2 stalls in that reconfiguration. But that is a requirement for ADA. I did also discuss the application in regards to the deficiency in parking coming closer to conformity. Normally, we don't require parking relaxations for those particular instances. When you have a deficient existing use and they're adding more parking, we technically don't typically get parking relaxations for that. So that being the case, after I re-reviewed that, I would be in favor of having condition number 1 on the conditions completely stricken. I'm sure if the board has any questions or concerns in that regard, then we can discuss that. In addition to the parking relaxation, the applicant is also requesting a front yard landscaping relaxation, 40%. The overall amount is being met. However, because of the existing parking for the vacant hardware store and the proposal for the additional parking lot on the south side of the building, in order to bring the site closer to conformity, it is still deficient in the front yard technically. After speaking with Mr. Garbarino's office, there is no specific tenant as of yet for the building. So right now it's just a general medical office use. Based on the fact that the parking provided is being increased to lessen the existing shortfall and the landscaping on site is mostly in existing condition, staff recommends the board grant the application subject to the conditions. And just to speak in regards to Mr. Garbarino's comments on the amendments, as I stated in the report, I would be in favor of striking condition number 1, as they're technically really just increasing the parking. So it wouldn't necessarily be a parking relaxation that they would need to ask for. And in regards to item number 2 on the conditions, the last sentence speaking in terms of the superior landscaping treatment, I had amended that, but I guess it's not in the packet. Basically, the landscaping treatment is just going to be subject to whatever is shown on the approved site plan, and that's going to be worked out with engineering staff. So.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant or Mr. Gonzalez? I'm not seeing any. Mr. Garbarino, you're okay with what Tana just said in terms of the 2 conditions?
Yes, absolutely. And I'd like to say something. I've lived here all my life, and this application where they're demolishing the 1 vacant building and putting parking in its place will really make this corner look good. Right now, it's this vacant building. It was a church, was jammed in there, and for years. And then the previous hardware store was a laundry, and when they moved Brinkman there, they really cleaned up the area pretty good. But now with the demolishing the church to the south, it's really going to make this corner stand out. So I visually, I can see it only as an improvement.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Mr. Moriarty?
Yes, I would move to close the hearing and to grant the application subject to the modifications to the conditions that Tanner outlined.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Moriarty to close the public hearing and grant the
I'll second.
application subject to the conditions as modified by Mr. Gonzalez. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Frugieri. Everybody had their hands up and only one had their mic unmuted, so we'll give it to Brian. Second by Mr. Frugieri. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The application passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too. Item 3 on the agenda, Planning Board application public hearing, NCSG 123 LLC, PB 2020-021, south side of 3rd Street, 189 feet west of Cleveland Avenue, Bayshore, 0 Cleveland Avenue. Applicant requests a Planning Board special permit for an automobile parking field and or vehicle fleet storage yard in the Industrial Transition District pursuant to 68-700F. Site plan modifications may be requested as part of this application. Good evening to the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Yulia Viola for the applicant, Sir Tillman Ballin, 100 Motor Parkway, Happock, New York. I'm joined today by Chris Robinson from R&M Engineering. And I will make my presentation and Chris Robinson will make additional comments on the application. This application is for a planning board special permit for an automobile parking field pursuant to section 68-700F of the town code. The subject property is located on South 3rd Street, west of Cleveland Avenue in the hamlet of Bayshore and is currently zoned as Industrial Transition District. To the north of the subject property is Bus Depot, and immediately to the east is a concrete yard with industrial building, which is zoned Industrial 2 District. To the west is also a concrete yard, which is zoned Industrial 1 District. In fact, the area within the immediate vicinity of the subject property is purely industrial. As such, the proposed use is consistent with the predominant character of the surrounding area and would not have any adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. On September 27, 2018, the Islip Town Board granted the application of NCSG 123 LLC for a change of zone from Industrial 1 to Industrial Transition District. Site plan modifications such as landscaping relaxations were also approved as part of that application. Subsequently, the applicant filed and recorded the declaration of covenants and restrictions. The applicant is now seeking to utilize the subject property for storage of new vehicles which do not require repair. There will be no vehicle sales or leases on the subject parcel. No exterior mechanical equipment will be stored on the property, and there will be no outdoor sales and display on site. The applicant is also seeking a pavement relaxation for the crushed stone and RCA surface. As proposed, RCA will be a base layer with a layer of crushed stone on top. This type of surface works well for the proposed use since the site will only be used for the storage of vehicles and there will be no people going to and from the site other than people assisting deliveries of the vehicles to the site. Additionally, the applicant will provide stormwater drainage on site in accordance with the current subdivision and land development regulations. The applicant will also incorporate non-point source pollution mitigation into the overall drainage plan by providing natural swales and catch basin inserts. We are also proposing flush curbing where the edge of crushed stone storage area meets the landscape buffer. The applicant has agreed to dedicate a 5-foot wide strip on the northern side of the property to the town of Islip prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. The vehicles will be properly screened from view with a 20-foot landscape buffer area, which will consist of 2 rows of evergreen trees and grass and a chain link fence. Lastly, I reviewed the planning board conditions with the client and we are in agreement with the conditions. And based on the aforementioned, the applicant respectfully submits that the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood would not be adversely affected by the granting of the subject application and requests your favorable consideration of our application. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's nothing further from the applicant, I'm going to go to Ms. Wozniak for a staff report, as I have no one signed up to speak for this application. Ms. Wozniak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject property is located on the south side of 3rd Street, approximately 189 feet west of Cleveland Avenue in Bayshore, and is located within an entirely industrial area. The property received a change of zone in February to the Industrial Transition District in order to permit the outdoor storage of vehicles. Currently, the property is undergoing site plan review and is looking to obtain the required special permit for a vehicle storage yard, along with the relaxation of pavement requirements as per the subdivision and land development regulations. The storage yard will be used for surplus motor vehicle dealership inventory and is located adjacent to industrial uses. The applicant is proposing a site plan which is in substantial conformance to the site plan referenced in the covenants and restrictions, with landscape and fence screening along 3rd Street. Therefore, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions, which requires screening of the vehicles and prohibits the storage of junked, wrecked, or leaking cars or parts.
Thank you, Ms. Wozniak. Any questions for Ms. Wozniak or the applicant? No, not seeing any. Is there anything further from the applicant? I'll take that as a no. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we close this public hearing and grant the application subject to the conditions.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Frugieri to close the public hearing and grant the application subject to the conditions. Is there a second?
I'll make a second.
Second by Mr. Matamore. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The application passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 4 on the agenda, Planning Board application public hearing, Tian Li Li, PB 2020-025, east side of Constance Court, south of Kings Highway, aka Rabro Drive, County Route 6, Hopog 11, Constance Court. Applicant requests a Planning Board special permit for a showroom in the Industrial 1 District pursuant to 68-340.1R. Site plan modifications may also be requested as part of this application. Good evening to the applicant.
Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. John R. Bracco, architect, 111 Railroad Avenue, Sayville, New York, on behalf of the applicant Tian Li. We're here before you tonight in regards to converting existing office space to showroom space within this existing industrial building. The space in question equates to about 12% of the overall square footage of the building. The applicant, who recently purchased the property, owns a kitchen cabinet and countertop company and is looking to set up kitchen displays in what was the old office area. This property does have a previous site plan approval, and the current site layout is nearly identical to the previously approved site plan. There is an existing mezzanine open to the warehouse and used for storage that existed prior to my client's purchase of the property, which is currently not on the CO and which we'll be legalizing with the building department. However, as you can see from the submitted site plan, the building still meets the parking and floor area ratio requirements with the existing mezzanine included. And if the board has any questions, I'll do my best to try and answer.
Thank you. I have nobody signed up to speak on this application, so I'm going to go to a staff report from Ms. Wozniak, and then we'll come back for questions.
Thank you. The subject property is located on the southeast corner of Constance Court and Rambro Drive in Hauppauge. It's improved with 30,000 square foot industrial building that received a CO in 1985. In May, the property was issued a stop work order for conducting interior alterations without the required permits. Tonight, the applicant is looking to obtain the necessary showroom special permit in order to continue with the interior alterations. The proposed showroom is approximately 3,500 square feet and is located in the northwest portion of the building. The showroom will be accessory to a warehouse use and will be used to display kitchen cabinets and countertops. The property has been improved according to the approved site plan on file. However, it appears some required street trees are missing. In addition, the applicant has been actively working with the fire marshal's office to clean up some of the violations on site. Staff also used an office parking calculation for the showroom portion of the building, which seemed appropriate, and the site has more than adequate parking to accommodate the use. Based on this, planning recommends the board grant the application, subject to the attached conditions, which requires the applicant to close out all violations with the fire marshal's office and complete landscaping improvements as mandated by the previously approved site plan.
Thank you, Ms. Wozniak. So either Ms. Wozniak or to the applicant, what are the open violations that have not been closed and why have they not been closed? You're on mute.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah, I could speak a little bit to that. Basically, yeah, I've been working closely with Fire Marshal Petrarca. The owner purchased the property. I think they were a little naive and got a little bad advice about what did and didn't need permits. There was also a bit of a language barrier there as well. But they started doing some alteration work within the building. And I can tell you that, and I sent Kelly an email today from Fire Marshal Petrarca. Any and all of the violations that didn't require a building permit have all been addressed and taken care of. The only ones that are still pending are the ones that need a building permit. And we do have completed architectural, structural, and mechanical drawings. We're just waiting, for if the planning board approves this application to then move on to the building department and submit for those permits to clear up the remaining violations.
Okay, so your representation that everything that can be closed out has been closed out. The only ones that are still open are awaiting our approval.
Yes, they are awaiting, building permit, yeah.
Which would then allow you to get the building permit. Okay, any further questions from the board? Not seeing any. Is there a motion?
A motion.
Mr. Bruno.
I'd like to make a motion that we close the hearing and grant the application subject to the attached covenants.
It's a motion by Mr. Bruno to close the public hearing and grant the application subject to the covenants. Is there a second?
I'll make a second.
Second by Mr. Matamore. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5 on the agenda, Town Board Application Public Hearing, 31 Union Corp. CZ 2020-019, east side of Union Avenue, approximately 283.25 feet south of Montauk Highway, State Route 27A, islip 31 Union Avenue. Applicant requests a change of zone from Residence B to Residence CAA District in order to permit 3 two-family dwellings. Site plan modifications are requested as part of this application. Good evening to the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Mel Gonzalez, MIG Architect, PLLC, located at 1050 Nichols Road, Islandia, New York. I'm here on behalf of my client for 31 Union Corp. And currently the property is a Residence B, and we're proposing a change of zone to a CAA district. The current property has 3 structures on it. The existing structure, which is on Union Avenue, is a 2-story, 2-family dwelling, which has a C of O and is compliant. And the remainder of the property is mostly paved. It's probably about, I would say, 85% of the property is paved, very little landscaping. And there are 2 other buildings. At one time, this was a drill welling company, and one structure is a story and a half, and the other structure is a one-story barn. The one-story barn, which is closest to the town parking lot, which is directly to the north of the subject property, is approximately 5 feet from the property line. And the existing structure that is to the south of the property is approximately 3 feet 11 from the property line. We propose to maintain the existing two-family dwelling that has the C of O. The next property, building, which is just slightly to the east, which is 3 feet 11 from the south property line, will be renovated and added to incorporate 2 units, which would have 2 bedrooms in each unit for multifamily. Further to the east, we are proposing to demolish the existing barn structure, which is close to the town property. And what we're doing is constructing a new structure, also a 2-family, 2 bedrooms, so that we can maintain a much greater distance from the town parking lot. The distance in that, I would say, is roughly about almost 17 feet. Okay, so what we're proposing to do is alleviate some of that congestion on that property line. In addition to that, we are currently requesting a relaxation on parking. The calculations for the parking require us to provide 11 parking stalls, and we are providing 10. So we're asking for a relaxation of 1 parking stall. In addition to that, we are proposing a FAR of 29.7%, where 25% is allowed. So we have an increase of 4.7%, approximately 1,310 square feet of additional FAR. What we are doing is adding a substantial amount of landscaping, as you can see, along the south and east property, in order to provide as much buffer as we can from the neighbors. And what we're also doing is providing a new fence and pier, a state fence and pier configuration along the north property line, adjacent to the town parking lot. And we will be maintaining the access, which is a 12-foot access from the town property or parking lot, so that when we have refuse pickup, it can come in directly into the property. As you can see, just to the south, we have the dumpster directly across from the opening. In addition to that, we're trying to provide as much landscaping as possible. We're providing in the front yard 13.34% of landscaping, where 10% is required. And with respect to the overall, we're 20% areas required. We are providing 4.23%. That takes into consideration excluding the buffer area, which is heavily landscaped, and what we're proposing. If you have any questions, I'll open myself up to that.
If you have nothing further in your presentation, I'm going to go to the public hearing.
Sure.
And then after the public hearing, we'll come back for a staff report and then some questions.
Terrific. Thank you.
Great. I'm going to go to Shimon Stillerman.
I was only going to talk after hearing other comments, so I'll pass for now.
Okay. I will go to Barbara Vuris.
Hello.
Barbara, you go ahead.
Okay. It took a minute to unmute. I have gone through a lot of the documents, and it seems that the site plan and the information that was sent to the resident, doesn't match what we're talking about tonight. The original plan that was sent to residents showed a lot area of 17,511 square feet with the 0.40 acres. And tonight's plan is showing a lot area of 19,152.96 square feet. And of course, that's going to show an additional FAR capacity. So I'm wondering, how did we notify residents and not give them the most updated site plan and information for this plan? It seems unfair. This was advertised as an 8 o'clock meeting. It's starting already at 7. So anyone that thought they were going to talk or speak about this proposal, had they not logged on early enough, would probably not even have a chance to hear the architect's presentation. The original site plan that we were given had actually referred to 3 buildings versus 4. Now the new plan shows the middle building that has like what looks to be 4 apartments was originally referred to as building 2 and building 2. Now it's referred to as building 2 and building 3. So I'm wondering if this is really fair to have a meeting without public opinion, public able to discuss this whole situation, because I know there were more people that wanted to be able to speak to this plan. So that's my first thing. I have a number of questions on 0.40 acres. Isn't that 17,424 square feet? I don't understand where they got 17,511. Like numbers, just the calculations just don't jive for me, but I'm not an expert. I'm just saying, if you convert it on a calculator, it comes up lower than what it originally stated. And now, based on tonight's meeting, it's showing that we're now talking about 19,000.
I'll ask the staff to address that when we get through all the public hearing.
Okay. And then I wanted to know about one application that I looked at said that we were talking about a zone GST changing GST to CAA. Is that a different kind of a zone than Residence B? Well, everything I've seen initially that was sent out said Residence B to CAA. Yet on the permit that the applicant supplied, it says GST, G as in George, S as in Sam, T as in Tim. Is that a zone?
Well, the call of the meeting tonight is changed from B to CAA.
Correct.
I'm not sure where the other one came from.
But it's in all the applications that were sent to the town planning board as GST. So I'm wondering, why? It's actually on the document that says Town of Islip Department of Planning, the town board special permit. And it says existing zone GST. And that was dated June 17th of this year.
I'll ask the staff to address that part as well when we get through the public hearing.
Okay. So those were a few things that I'm confused about.
Okay.
I also wanted to know, is the applicant talking about using this property as apartment buildings, like a garden apartment, or I'm very confused about this property, like how it will be used.
Okay, so type of apartments.
It's a residential area, and now it's saying 8 apartments on the site, and yet they're saying in other places 6 apartments. So is that because the house itself was a legal 2-family house?
That's my understanding, but we'll readdress that as well once we go through the public comments. I'm just going to ask you your over 3 minutes to please try and wrap up.
Okay, so my basic concern with this is I do think that this property has a much larger impact on the current zoning. I don't think that this should go through. I think that based on the fact that everything I see has a lower square footage than what the applicant is talking about tonight, I do think that this is going to stress the neighborhood. When we walk up to that town parking lot and to Chase Bank, the rear of Chase Bank, on rainy and snowy days, there's a huge drainage problem there. It's flooded, it doesn't drain. You would almost need wading boots to get through there. That's not been ever corrected, and I don't see, adding more homes, how that's going to help us. So I think this is going to be a negative impact on the environment, on the character, the quality of our neighborhood. And I do think it's going to stress the environment and the sewer system as well. I'm just not in favor of this. And I'm also concerned that residents aren't getting enough time to really know about this due to COVID and the fact that not as many residents can handle a Zoom meeting. And, I just think that, we're just being run down. And I think this is very unfair to the homes that are very close to this property.
Okay. Thank you for your comments.
You're welcome.
Sarah Guzman. Ms. Guzman, are you with us?
Yes, hello.
Go ahead.
Hi. I just have a few comments about it. My primary concern with this plan is with the safety. As a resident and a parent of children who, we all walk into town and as well as driving, I'm very concerned about the additional cars. I know they're already looking for a relaxation on the required number of parking spaces. But everybody knows it's not just the residents that'll be parking, it's guests, teenage 20-something-year-old drivers living at home. That's already an extremely congested area to be walking through and driving through, especially at rush hour times with the bank, the businesses and everything in that area. I think it's a safety concern for me, for the potential of, accidents and pedestrian safety as well, as there are a lot of people who do walk, ride bicycles and everything in the area.
Thank you. We'll address those when we finish the public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Maeve Melanith?
Hello?
Hello, go ahead.
Do you want your video on?
Go ahead.
Okay.
So our whole family's here. I'm Maeve, my mom Jennifer, my father Michael, and my brother Sam. My dad Michael's going to be talking for us.
This is the first that I've seen the plan. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
This is the first that I've actually seen the diagram, and I have some questions about it. First, and then a couple concerns. I'm assuming that the entrance to this complex would be on Union directly on the west side.
It looks like it's on the north side, but there's a west side entrance and the north side entrance. Can somebody just confirm that? It's both west and north?
So you're actually granting an entrance from the town parking lot into this complex?
I believe there's already an entrance there, but we'll address that during the staff report.
Okay, there is an entrance, but it's fenced and it's only open when that business was open.
Right.
Okay. Also, the entrance on the west side. There's obviously, you're aware that the entrance to the main parking lot is also on the west side. I would say 15 feet to the north of that. Okay, that's a very, very confusing traffic condition with people turning in and out of that parking lot. And then also pulling into that same driveway. Right. Has there been a petition to actually put a stop sign in any place there? Because right now, that's a very, very busy turn off of Main Street. Added to that is this Union is the main traffic flow to the library. Okay, so you're looking to increase traffic on the singular block by the 8 apartments. Okay. Question about the parking. If there's going to be 8 units, you can assume there may be 16 residents. Okay. The gentleman has already asked for a reduction in parking. Okay. But naturally, that overflow parking would fill the town parking lot, which is already extensively overfilled much of the day. Okay. Those are my concerns. One question I have for the town, and we know that we have a parking problem in the town of Islip, in the hamlet of Islip. This does not solve it by adding more residents next to a parking lot that's already over congested. Has the town considered this property for public domain in any way?
I will ask staff that question along with the other ones when we finish the public hearing.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. James, is it Verizer? Go ahead when you're ready. Do we have you in the room ready to speak?
I didn't sign up to speak.
Oh, okay. Sorry, we had you there. Okay. We'll go to Joseph Clayton.
Can you hear me now? Hold on, let me just unmute myself, maybe. Am I audible currently? Can you hear me or no?
Go ahead, Ms. Clayton. We can hear you. Okay.
All right, so just a few of the topics that were touched on before, one of which was the actual zoning of what it's changing from and what it's changing to. What it's changing from the previous zoning, there were already underlying issues with that back when the original application for what was R&L well drilling, I don't believe was ever actually completed and stamped. I had looked into this property as something of interest when it was up for sale. And this was actually what stopped me in my tracks. I was told that it would not be passed for the uses I intended, which were far less abrasive. The Zoom meeting part of this, also the access to actually be able to get this, I was shared this information through someone on Facebook. Actually being notified of this, I feel like it was a little underhanded. The access into the lot itself, is that actually a road would be my question. Because the access off of Union is now sharing this into that parking lot, the town lot. Is that a road or is that just considered that parking lot's access?
Okay, we'll get you the answers to those questions. Go ahead with all your questions. We'll take them down and then come back to them.
Okay. And the other thing here is the abundance of traffic and parking. That is the concern, which I think I would like to back the previous on that. It seems like that is way under what would actually be required for the number of units. And also the way this was labeled, I was confused by what was stated before. This was labeled as a previous 2-family dwelling. Is that correct?
There is a 2-family dwelling on the property.
Okay.
In addition to the other structures on the property.
You're talking about the existing main house that's actually facing Union?
That's my understanding of what the current 2-family is, yes.
Okay, because that actually, that part was a 2-bedroom. There's one main floor, kitchen, dining room, living room. And the second floor is only 2 bedrooms. That is, I believe, mislabeled on previous documents. I think that's, I don't believe that's correct.
Okay, we'll get them to clarify that. It's labeled on this one as a 2-story dwelling with the 2-bedroom unit in it, but we'll ask them to clarify.
yes, I viewed the property and I believe that's something that may need to be addressed in addition to.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you. Anything
There
else?
was one other thing was the previous use of this was a well drilling company, and the abundance of things on the property that I viewed when I was there was all of the well drilling equipment. It amounted to quite the large total of 55-gallon drums and storage of oil and things like that. I don't know if the previous use was a concern for any of this or what may have been left on site or what it's like now. But it is also, that's one of my other concerns.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Michael Arario.
Oh, I just got ticked. If I wanted to make my house 25% bigger than I'm allowed to, way too close to Ron's house, and if parking was not enough parking in my house, it would say,
Mr. Arario, you're on.
hello?
Hello. Mr. Arario, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. There's just a few things I wanted to talk about. One, the concessions that you're making, it's 3 major concessions, if that's what is going to come up here. The FAR, the parking, which I believe is 1.7 per family unit, which it's 8 units, so I think it's a bit more than 10 that they need to have to satisfy that. So even I can't even count 10 spots on this particular lot itself. I don't know where I can find all 10 of them. And that doesn't even include what you're going to see when people actually show up there. You're talking usually 2 cars per household, so that's 16 cars. Even that's just a ballpark number right there. You also have the setback, which is a problem. If you look at the screen there, I'm the Stephanie Casagrande, formerly Stephanie Casagrande area. Another thing I'm really worried about is actually where the windows are going to be facing, if they're going to be facing directly into my backyard. That's going to be something. I have 2 young children. I don't want to have people looking into my property itself. The barrier that they're looking at for the landscape is only 6 feet tall, and it's a 35-foot structure, which is, I believe, too high for, that's another ordinance. I don't know if that's actually allowed on new construction here. In a lot of towns, it's not allowed more than 2 feet, 2 stories. I don't know what the zone is on that, but that in itself is going to also block areas of my house. And I'm worried about the fact that I would also like a solid barrier instead of the stockade fence that's there currently. You're talking 6-foot arborvitaes. It would take a very long time for them to grow to a point where it actually did any sort of blocking of the site of my actual property itself. Besides for that, the parking, if you're overflowing into the municipal parking lot, that in itself is hard enough to get a parking spot in on a regular basis. Give me 1 second, I'm sorry. Yeah, and also you're talking, it's about 25% less than the code offers, which in itself, for the living space to what's it called, to our property itself, you're looking at a big concession. I don't know if that's actually warranted in this case. I don't think the way that it's getting done right now with this Zoom meeting, a lot of people that wanted to sign on have had a very hard time signing on, of the neighbors that I've been talking to throughout the thing. So they also would like to have a few things to say as well, but it's very hard to get on. And we've been trying to get plans and everything for a while, and it's hard to get anything through. We've made phone calls, and we didn't get any justification or anything except for maybe these plans and a very small thing that you could barely read. That's about it on that account.
Thank you. Patricia Gotel.
Hello,
Hello, go ahead.
you can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. My name is Pat Verizer Gettle. I live at 35 Union Avenue with my husband, Ken Gettle. Our property borders the lot in question. We have already submitted through email a list of our specific concerns, but to summarize, we are greatly concerned about the impact this project will have on our quality of life, both personally as immediate next door neighbors to 3 looming 2-story buildings, each containing 2 families on a lot ill-suited to this purpose, with one building virtually located on our property line, and to the community at large, which is primarily composed of old neighborhood homes of an historic nature. Noise added to an already noisy area due to bars, restaurants, and the bank will be a hardship. Congestion due to the necessity of adding parking and traffic to an already bustling area could easily become overwhelming. Numerous light sources will contribute to a lack of privacy and create unacceptable light pollution. A garbage area will border the northwest corner of our yard, our front yard. Recent activity on the lot resulting in extreme noise points to the negative result of having an absentee owner. No consideration has been displayed to indicate that this is in fact a residence with people living next door. A prolonged and extensive period of construction will greatly impact the quality of life for us and the surrounding neighborhood. And if I may, I wanted to speak briefly to Mr. Clayton, I think his point regarding the oil drums, et cetera, on the property. I had thought, as did my brother Jerry Verizer, who lives next to us and is also a neighbor of this situation, perhaps an environmental assessment might be necessary at some point regarding the goings on in the past from R&L. And also a comment, I've lived here for many years and the house in front has never been a 2-family one. And I think it was Mr. Aurario had mentioned he was concerned about the windows facing his backyard. I'm very worried about windows facing our yard. It's a severe breach of privacy and a great concern. So thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Sean Wallace. Sean Wallace, if you're on, you could just unmute and go ahead.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the town board. My wife and I, Kelly Wallace, live at 24 Willow Avenue. Obviously, we feel similar concerns to the people that have spoken before us. One issue that I brought to Mr. Colgan prior to this was the apron egress that's leaving the property into the municipal lot. It was my understanding that that was going to be a locked gate. I don't know if that is still true or that's going to be an exit or an entrance into the parking lot. Also, I live adjacent to a commercial property. What you used to know is the Meridian Loft Apartments, which also was known as the Masonic Temple. And at one point, the parking lot that is near there was a residential home, which was converted to a parking lot. I recently had my home refinanced, and I moved to this home in 2013 to find out that I was told by the appraiser that since I'm adjacent to commercial properties, the value of my home has gone down over $30,000. So I am concerned that this development is not going to help the value of my home. It's going to increase density, which is already in a neighborhood that has issues with the downtown plan is usually something that comes up in the hamlet of Islip, which we all love. I also am wondering how the town board is considering all these exceptions to the codes regarding parking, FAR, and the setbacks that are necessary to comply. And I don't know that this development of the property is appropriate for the neighborhood and the characteristics of the historical homes that are adjacent and surround it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Susan Zag. Zag, if you're on, just unmute, you can go ahead. Zag, you with us? Okay, not hearing Ms. Zag, I'm going to go to Todd Pearsall and we'll come back and see if we can get Ms. Zag to speak. Mr. Pearsall?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Hi, Todd Pearsall. I am the owner of the property directly east of what we're looking at. I do have several concerns. One is the dwelling on Union Avenue. I've been a volunteer fireman in Islip for 30 years, born and raised in 30 years here, and 50 years on my time in Islip. I've been in that dwelling. It is not a two-family dwelling. On multiple occasions, I was in there for fire calls, and that is not a two-family dwelling. I do have several concerns, as the previous people have spoken. The previous site was R&L drilling. There was a lot of chemicals, oil, et cetera, stored on the property. I would request before any further, we go further, that a environmental study is done on that property. Once we start construction, we are disturbing the soil, and who knows what contaminants would be discovered, and through rain runoff will end up into our storage drains and eventually going into our Great South Bay and having an environmental impact. Barbara previously pointed out we have a high flood area in that parking lot on Union that has never been addressed. And now that we're building on that site, that's going to only impact that even more. As previous people have spoken, the building due east would look directly into my backyard. And again, I would be very concerned about the windows. I have 3 daughters, and I do not like the idea of people peering out their window into my backyard, looking at my 3 daughters, as all of you would probably have the same concerns as well. As far as the property line, I am fortunate in the sense that there is 25 feet between me and the building. But I am concerned that right now we're showing landscaping and a chain link fence from what I can derive from the plans here. There would have to be some sort of solid barrier, I think would be at a minimum. For the Gettle property, from what I can tell, there's 4 feet, maybe 4.5 feet between the property line and the building. So I don't know how that could possibly be approved. The other thing is we'll have a dumpster directly in the middle of this. When that dumpster is being picked up, what kind of noise ordinance would have an impact on the community? The other thing that on concerns is, again, as many have pointed out, this is a historical community of the hamlet of Islip. And what are the purposes of these units? Are they going to be rented? Are they going to be sold? What type of individuals and families are moving into these units? Are they just more of a transit rental? Or is it long-term, which has not been discussed, or the purpose of the use on these properties? So again, the historical character in the hamlet of Islip will definitely be affected by the construction of these units. As the house on Union, it is, again, seems to be described differently than what is existing on the property now. Somebody else has also the road that looks like it's on the north side, which has the entrance on the west coming off of Union. That currently is a driveway and stops at the end of the property. So that would have to be converted into a road. And that spacing would only fit one car. So that would basically be a one-way, because somebody would have to back up and then they would have to access into the town parking lot, which is overflowed consistently. As on Willow Avenue, we deal with the brunt of the overflow of parking needs for the town, and our streets are constantly filled with vehicles. And we also have the valet issue of the restaurants on Main Street who valet into town parking as well. So we basically have limited town parking, and they are being used by local businesses. And now we are going to add additional stress on these parking spots by the limited amount of spacing, because again, we did point out, if we're talking 16 at a minimum parking spaces needed to support this construction, they do not have that on the site, so that will have to overflow onto Union Avenue or into the town parking lot. So those are my concerns. I think I've touched on everything, and I think people have stressed the fact that, yes, I was notified about this, but many of my neighbors have not had the opportunity to voice their concerns due to the Zoom and basically the short-term notice for them. So I think the town board should take that into consideration. I do appreciate you listening and hearing my concerns. I hope you all have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Green. Mr. Green? Mr. Green, if you can hear us, just unmute. You can go ahead. Not hearing Mr. Green, I'm going to go to Stacy Moore, and we'll come back to Mr. Green. Stacy Moore.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Hi, I live on Union. Okay, I'm also a local realtor, and I feel that this definitely does not belong in this area. Okay, this is our quaint little town of Islip. I have young boys that drive, and just on that corner, you cannot get down the corner with the cleaners, the town businesses, and the library. Our block constantly has cars parked on both sides. It's already a narrow block. Just getting home, I tell my kids to go up South Bay or Ocean, because coming down the front of our block is not fun. It's a nightmare. I'm also concerned too, like I said, I'm a realtor, and I was in that house. It's a one family, it's not a two family. And the use of the property and the concern of the chemicals is another concern. It doesn't belong here. And it's gonna bring down our house values. And the other problem also is that we weren't notified. This was done without, I learned on Facebook, okay? It shouldn't be passed without the town knowing what's happening. And that's really all I have to say. I'm not happy about it, and I hope you take it into consideration what me and all my neighbors are saying. We live here, this is our homes. And I don't like the fact that I can't get to my house. We don't need 16 more cars trying to get down there with nowhere to park. So
Thank you.
that's all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Susan Zag, are you able to join us and speak? Ms. Zag, we can't hear you if you're trying to speak. We can't hear you. I'm going to try. Mr. Green, are you able to unmute yours? Mr. Green or Ms. Zag? Okay, we can't hear either one of you if you're trying to speak. Mr. Stillerman, we're back to you. This would be the end of the public hearing. Is there anything you'd like to add at this point?
No, I'm good. Thanks for everyone's comment.
Thank you. I do have one other person who's raised a hand, Drew Shermer. Mr. Shermer, did you want to speak on this application? Mr. Shermer, you're on if you'd like to speak on this application.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Again, my name is Drew Shermer. I live at 45 Union Avenue. I live on the other side of the Verizon property with Ms. Gettle and her brothers Jim and Jerry Verizon, and actually across the street from Scott Green and the Milanets. I really want to echo the comments of Ms. Gettle and of Mr. Pearsall and Ms. Moore. This street is subject to so much traffic, so much parking. You know, we're so close to Main Street. So any events, we got street fairs, we get overflow traffic. Before COVID, weekends, we would get traffic. Every library event, we get more traffic. And right next door to me is a Chabad that they have religious services in their backyard, and they bring more traffic, and I had cars parked in front of my house. Granting this application would adversely affect the historical nature and character of this neighborhood. And again, I wasn't aware of the situation with the chemicals, but I would agree with Mr. Pearsall that if anything, an environmental impact study could be done. But in any event, I don't know why they're seeking zoning for two-family residences when the overall character of this neighborhood is single-family dwellings. I believe that if this application is granted, the property values on this area would be greatly reduced, and the quality of life, which is also already subject to overcrowding as far as high volume of traffic and parking, it makes things difficult, even though this is a great place to live. It would not be good. And give me one more second. I just want to note there were surrounding blocks. There are already 2 duplexes at number 50 and 67. There are no other multiple family dwellings in our neighborhood. And those properties have been grandfathered in. So there is no precedent for converting single family dwellings into family dwellings.
Thank you.
That's pretty much all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Green, are you able to speak now? Scott Green? Okay, not hearing you at all. And Susan Zag, one last time, you were able to speak? Unmute.
do not have either one of you. Suzanne Stenger. Ms. Stenger? Ms. Stenger, are you with us? Don't hear you. Okay, not hearing from Mr. Green, Ms. Zag, or Ms. Stenger, I'm going to turn to Mr. Colgan to give us a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This application proposes repurposing 3 structures on the property into 2-family dwellings. Previously, the site had housed a drilling company with outdoor storage, which at the time was a legal non-conforming use. The drill use has vacated, and the certificate of occupancy lists that there was a 2-family dwelling dating back to 1966. Site plan shows access from Union Avenue and the municipal lot to the north. The proposed landscaping is significantly less than 20%, as stated by the site plan. There's also a 1-spot parking relaxation proposed. The proposed CAA zoning permits 2-family dwellings. Generally, this zoning category is more appropriate when locating near goods and services. The subject site is located adjacent to downtown Islip. However, the board did receive a lot of comments heard this evening that the staff believes warrants further looking into. So the staff would recommend that the board reserve decision tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Colgan. Mr. Colgan, can you speak about the notice requirements? Then can I ask the applicant, in fact, if they did the mailings or if we've received notification of the mailings to the neighbors and what the radius is?
Yeah, briefly, the applicant is required to mail a notice to all those property owners within 200 feet, notifying them of the hearing, the date, the time, and in this case, how it's being presented, which is via Zoom webinar. The site is also required to post signs, 1 for every 200 feet of street frontage, also indicating the time and location of the meeting and what the applicant is requesting.
Thank you. And did we receive proof of mailing?
I don't have
May
the
I
file
be
in front
heard?
of me.
Yes.
May I be heard? Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, it's Ray Just. I'm the attorney for the applicant. Yes, we did, I believe we did 32 separate certified return receipt mailings. It was all done properly and in accord with the town's requirements.
Can't hear anybody.
Mr. Chairman, you're muted.
Can't hear me then. All right, how's that? Can anybody address, was the original call or was the original notification that went out had a different change of zone, not from B to CAA? Did this start as something else? Is anyone aware of it being different? Certainly on what we have on the call tonight, it's B to CAA.
Not to my knowledge, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Colgan, has it been B to CAA as far as you know?
That's the way the town has received it and advertised it since its inception.
Okay. And then I guess there's a question about the lot size, what the actual lot size is here.
Well, the town records indicate that it's actually approximately half an acre. I mean, it's not impossible that either the town records or the survey is incorrect. That was something we'd have to look into further to verify the correct number.
I can speak to that effect, Mr. Chairman. There was a survey, updated survey that was prepared by John Minto. And on that survey, it lists 17,511 square feet, which is 0.40 acres as he's listed and certified on his survey. The survey is dated January 20th of 2020. So it's a fairly recent survey.
Okay.
So the information that is indeed listed on the site plan is accurate.
Okay. Thank you. I guess we'll check what we have on the town records to see if there's actually more. Make sure we take that property back.
Sure.
All right. Can somebody speak to, so the north entrance on the, coming off the town parking lot, will that be opened or that'll be gated closed?
At the moment, it is proposed to be open, strictly for the purpose of providing access to the dumpster, number one, directly across from the north property line, as well as providing a fire access to the property. That is something that we had discussed with Fire Marshal Doucette, and he recommended that we address it in that manner.
And can you speak to the road that'll come off of Union Avenue? What is the width of that? Will it fit 2 cars?
It is a single car. The width of that property, I will tell you in a second. The width of that is approximately, let's see. Just 1 second, please. It's about 10.5 feet in width at the opening on Union Avenue there, and then it widens. So it's a single access.
Just for my sake, how do we plan on, if the north entrance is solely for the purpose of fire access and emptying the dumpster, how do we plan on moving the cars in and out of that development when it's a single lane access?
One of the things that we would have to discuss with the town is if they're willing to provide access or egress and access from the town parking lot.
Okay, so that's certainly a new development. In terms of parking relaxation, Ms. Cole, can you speak to the parking requirements for a development like this, and then the number of spots versus the number needed?
Yep, for the number of apartments and the apartments' size, the calculation is 1.75 per unit. So in this instance, it's 1.75 for each of the 6 units, and that's approximately 11 spots. That would be the calculation.
And then for clarification, in case I misspoke, the residence on Union Avenue, is that a legal 2-family, or is that a?
I mean, currently that's what the CO states. The CO does date back to 1966. We did hear testimony that that's no longer the case. It's not impossible that, a kitchen or some other living apparatus was removed over that course of time. That was quite a while ago. And it's also a very old CO. So I personally have never been in that facility. So that might warrant a further look as to whether or not that CO is, current.
And is that being considered as part of this property, as one whole property?
That's the only thing that's on the CO. What's also on the CO is it's the sheds.
I guess my question is the parking requirement, if there are 3 buildings with 2 units in each of them plus the existing to make 8, is what we're saying, or is it 6 total?
I'm reading this as 6 total. Each building can only be a 2-family dwelling. So okay. I think there might be some confusion with the southern structure.
Yes.
And, that can only be a 2-family dwelling. It cannot be a 4-family dwelling based on what the applicant's proposing and the proposed zoning.
So is that, Mr. Gonzalez, total, including the existing structure, going to be 6 units?
We have actually proposed 8 apartment units, 6 kitchen units. So what we have, to my understanding, is that the existing dwelling on Union Avenue, which has the C of O, will be maintained as a 2-bedroom unit, regardless of what is currently there. The building just to the east, okay, which is an existing building, which is currently, as I had stated before, approximately 4 feet from the south property line, will be maintained and converted into 4 bedrooms in that particular building. So there'll be 2 units with 2 bedrooms each, 1 bedroom each, pardon me. And then further to the east,
there'll be 4 units of 1 bedroom each.
There'll be 4 units, okay? Pardon me, 2 units, okay? So basically 1 building, 2 units, and each unit will have 2 bedrooms, 1 bedroom each, in other words. So if you look at the site plan, okay, you will see that that structure has building number 2, okay? And it also has next to it another building. So it has dwelling unit A and dwelling unit B. And each dwelling unit has 1 bedroom unit within it, okay? So in dwelling unit A, you have 1 bedroom on the first floor, 1 bedroom on the second floor. In dwelling unit B, same thing, 1 bedroom on the first floor, 1 bedroom on the second floor. So it's a total of 4 bedroom units, okay? And then further to the east.
Mr. Gonzalez, are they full 1-bedroom units with restroom? It's a full-sized apartment?
Yes.
Kitchen, restroom, it's not a rooming house, it's a, basically, each unit has full facilities?
Yes, it has full facilities. I can, if you want, I'm more than happy to share my screen and I can show you the floor plan for these units.
You can certainly do that, but as you're setting that up, Mr. Colgan, is that your understanding of what this application is?
My understanding, it would be 3 two-family dwellings, in which case there would be a total of 6 kitchens for the total property, and each building would be a 2-family unit. Again, 2 kitchens per building. That's how we define a living unit, is how many
Correct.
kitchens. Once you increase the number of kitchens, that increases the potential number of living units, and that's where we'd need some further clarification, because that may not be permissible with the proposed zoning district.
Yeah,
And we are maintaining the number of kitchens that are permitted, just 6.
I'm still confused that we have 6, in the new structures, there are going to be 6 units. What's happening with the Union Avenue structure?
That's remaining, that's existing, and that is a 2.
As
two
what?
bedroom, as a 2-bedroom.
As
They're
one
going to maintain
2-bedroom?
it. That they're going to maintain it as per the C of O from 1961. Regardless of what's there, my client will maintain that as per the C of O.
Okay, so C of O, if it's considered a legal 2-family, you're making it a 2-family or a 1 2-bedroom?
It's
One
going
family.
to be maintained a 2-family.
So Sean, that's, for Mr. Colgan, that's 8 units is what I'm hearing. So what does that do to our parking calculation?
That makes it significant relaxation.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr.
I mean,
Mojari.
in addition to the parking and all the other issues that brings up, what the applicant has just described is completely inconsistent with the call of the meeting, and
Yes.
therefore even the advertising isn't appropriate. So I don't see any sense in even continuing this hearing.
I would tend to agree. Certainly what's been called for, Mr. Bruno, go ahead. What's been called for in the meeting is
Yeah.
different. That's why I'm confused myself as to what we're actually speaking about. Mr. Bruno.
I'm looking at Mr. Gonzalez's plans and I'm also confused because what I see is that building 3 has 2 kitchens in it. Building 2 has 4 kitchens in it. So that's 6. And then whatever's in the front bedroom. So it can't be 6 kitchens only. There has to be at least 1 more. Am I right, Mr. Gonzalez? Am I missing something?
We have in the building number 2, okay, we have 4 kitchens in there.
Right.
Okay.
In building
And-
number 3,
And building number 3 has 2 kitchens.
right. So that's 6 kitchens. And
Correct.
what about building 1?
Has 1 kitchen in there.
So now that's 7 kitchens is what we're saying, not 6.
Yes, that's the existing structure. Correct.
Okay, so already we don't have 6, we have 7, but you're talking about, if I look at your plan, your site plan, it talks about 8 apartments, and you keep talking about building 1 being a 2-family. Well, to be a 2-family, it would need 2 kitchens.
But it only has 1 kitchen. What I'm referring to is the existing C of O. Okay, the
cannot-
existing C of O is listed as a 2-family.
Mr. Bruno, I think I'm going to short circuit you here. Mr. Colgan,
for it.
is the call of the meeting correct for what we're discussing this evening, what you're hearing from the applicant this evening?
Based on what I'm hearing from the applicant, it seems like it's incorrect. I mean, based on the site plan that was submitted, if you look at the data on the lower right-hand corner, I read that as 8 apartment units with 6 kitchen units. Now, again, we're defining a family unit That's one with the kitchen. So it's our understanding that there would be 3 two-family dwellings. If there's more kitchens, that raises the number of dwellings and also affects the parking calculation, which would warrant further, investigation from the board and from the planning staff.
So Mr. Gonzalez, if this application consists of more than 6 kitchens and 6 units, then we need to stop this public hearing actually, and you would need to repost with the proper information, the proper call for the meeting so that the neighbors have the proper information and the planning staff has the proper information so they could advise us as well. And then we could go forward and ask the appropriate questions. So my question to you, Ms. Gonzalez, is if you're before us today for 6 units with 6 kitchens, and that's it on the property, we can continue the discussion. If what you're saying is there are 6 plus a legal 2-family that you're going to add you're going to be using for 2 families, that's 8 units.
What I propose we do is reconvene, adjourn this and reconvene. I'll discuss it with my client and decide ultimately how he wants to handle the kitchen aspect of this so that we can be compliant.
Okay, so it may, if it's going to be more than 6, well, if it's going to be 6, we're going to come back for another. Either way, we're going to have to come back for another public hearing.
Correct.
But if it's going to be more than 6, you're going to have to do a complete new notice on this.
Understood.
So it goes back out. Are there further questions from the board?
Yeah, I just have one comment. If we're going to go back and start at square one again, I think the applicant really should do a phase 1 environmental on the site with the storage of all the 55-gallon drums. I like to know what's on that site before we take any action.
There was a phase 1 done by Middleton, the owner of the property, provided a phase 1 environmental, and it came back clean.
And I think that needs to be shared with planning staff and the board here so we can review that.
I'll ask my client to do so.
Okay, so I guess this meeting is going to be not reserved, adjourned. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
That we adjourn this hearing and go back so the applicant could reformulate his application and advertise it properly.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Frugieri to adjourn this hearing so that the applicant can reformulate and properly advertise the hearing. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second to Mr. Bruno. Slightly beat you, Mr. Moriarty. Your hand was up first, but he speaks a little quicker. So second by Mr. Bruno. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned. For those of you here for the public hearing, you can check with planning staff to see if anything's changed. But if there is a new public hearing, you will, and within the vicinity, as Mr. Colgan explained, you will receive notice in the mail, and the sign should be put back up with a new meeting date. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Item 6 on the agenda, Town Board Application, Public Hearing, Joseph Howard, CZ 2020-022, west side of Bayport Avenue, number 294, approximately 137 feet south of Montauk Highway, State Route 27A, Bayport, 294 Bayport Avenue. Applicant requests a modification of covenants and restrictions associated with TC 4090 in order to increase the square footage of the existing mixed-use building by 1,715 square feet and to construct a 1,606 square foot detached garage. Good evening to the applicant.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me? Thomas Bloor, the architect for the applicant, 60 Carlton Avenue, Suite 2, Islip Terrace, New York. The intent of this application is to expand the existing residence by 1,715 square feet, as well as construct a new detached garage, 1,606 square feet. The additions to the residence will to expand the existing living space on the floor, as well as expand the existing bedroom on the second floor. The new detached garage will be utilized for the storage of motor vehicles and miscellaneous equipment. It's not going to contain any habitable space. To the north of this property is a gas station. South is the railroad tracks. To the east is an office building, and to the west is an office building. The current zoning is T, and as you proceed to the south down the block, it becomes strictly residential. So this is a corridor leading to the residential, and the use of this as a GST is all residential. If the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. We're going to go to public hearing. I don't see anybody signed up to speak on this application, so I'm going to go to Mr. Colgan to give us a report. and we'll come back for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application proposes to expand an existing dwelling and allow for a detached garage in lieu of a detached 22,600 square foot office building. Subject property received a change of zone from Business 1 District to General Service T District back in 1994. This allowed for the property to have a two-family dwelling and an office use, which would not have been permitted in the then Business 1 District. The conceptual site plan at that time showed a separate office building in the rear with a parking lot in the front. The expansion of the dwelling still retains its residential appearance. The removal of the office building also preserves the residential look of the property and would create fewer adverse impacts over the prior approval. So to that end, the staff believes this application would have merit, if anything, to remove any noxious uses that would be less compatible with the surrounding area. So based on that, the staff would like the board to reserve decision unless there's any additional questions, to work on additional covenants with the applicant, and we can bring this back to the next hearing.
Questions for the applicant?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Mr. Moriarty?
Just a question, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Colgan. How is parking currently configured on this?
I'm sorry, you broke up there a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. How is parking currently configured on the site?
Well, with the existing site, it's just a driveway thing to the back. With what was approved was an additional driveway with a slightly larger parking lot, again, all within the front yard, which detracts from the residential appearance. So with this current proposal, it's not totally clear for me where the driveway would lead to the proposed garage. Maybe the applicant should shed some light on that. I imagine it'd be a shared driveway, but it would, the parking would remain what a standard dwelling would be, which would be 2 parking spots, but presumably there'll be more for this structure.
Right.
If this application moves forward.
Okay.
Yeah, in other words, the existing residence has a residential driveway that can house vehicles. The detached garage, to be honest, the owner is a hot rod collector. It's not being used for any commercial use or anything like that. He enjoys his cars and he wants a garage to house his vehicles. And, it's basically for the primary, owner / tenant there to house vehicles in. And he's actually okay with just having gravel leading to it.
Okay.
So, Mr. Bruno.
Mr. Colgan, I'm just wondering, just to clarify it, we talk about change of zone, town board special permit, modification of deeds and restrictions, but there's really not a town board, neither a change of zone nor a special permit here, right? This is just because, let me go another way. If this was a residential parcel instead of GST, this would be permitted as it is?
That is correct.
So the problem here is they went for a change of zone, they got the change of zone, and it's because it's GST and there were covenants associated with the GST. Otherwise, if this was residential, this would be an as-of-right situation?
Correct. Even if it was GST, the issue was the covenants were so overly specific over what was supposed to happen that unfortunately the applicant was forced to come back here to ask the board's permission for this.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Yeah. So 2 questions to
believe-
follow. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I believe the covenants were put there because the old application proposed building. So, everyone wanted to look, closely at if this building was ever going to go up, which it never did.
So my question, I guess, to Mr. Colgan is, to Mr. Bruno's point, why are we leaving it as a GST if in fact it's not being used as GST? And if we're going to leave it as a GST, what stops if we allow the extra structure to be built from being used later on for some other purpose that's not storage, which would implicate parking and other?
The board can certainly recommend to the town board a more restrictive zoning category because in this instance, the GST zoning is presumably of no benefit, certainly as of right now, to the applicant for his intents and purposes with the property. Unfortunately, due to an operational issue at the town clerk's office, I did not have direct access to the spirit and intent of that original rezoning. My guess is that the town board didn't see any a issue with allowing for GSD zoning because it was next to the railroad tracks, it was next to the gas station, and it would provide patrons to downtown Bayport. That's a guess. So that's up to the board. We can certainly limit the future scope of what this property could become, and we can certainly recommend that to the town board. Otherwise, if we leave it as GST and the board wants to review certain uses in the future, we can also impose covenants that give this board additional review before it gets any more intense than what's proposed today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with the application and constructing the extra unit and the expansion. My concern would be in the future that this person moves out and the boat store or the car storage becomes the use for another purpose, and we have an issue with parking or use or whatever the case may be, and we've approved the structure that's now been modified for another use. So I'd be okay with either to change the zone back or to putting restrictions on it to the applicant. Go ahead.
Yeah, my applicant would have no issues whatsoever with, any covenants or stating that this detached structure is for the use of storage of vehicles. Never to be turned into a commercial space, an office building, something like that.
Yeah, I would be okay with that. That's my only question, my only point there. So Mr. Bruno tried to get it out before I did. He always does that. It's got to slow him down a little bit. Anything further from the applicant?
No, I think that's all.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board? Mr. Colgan, you can draft a covenant or restriction on that to the effect of what.
And we can recommend to the town board what the appropriate single-family zoning designation would be, given the nature and character of the area and the size of the property.
Okay. So that being said, who wants to try and make the motion? Mr. Moriarty.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman. I'd move to close the public hearing and reserve decision this evening, giving the planning department some time to work on the appropriate language in the covenants and restrictions and the recommendation with respect to zoning on a going forward basis.
Okay, so motion to close the public hearing and reserve decision for the planning to work on the appropriate language. Is there a second to that? Second by Ms. Frugieri. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, we're reserved.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Item 7 on the agenda, major subdivision bond release, Grace Estates, East Islip, MS 2002-061, south side of Hunting Lane, east side of Blackmore Lane, East Islip. Applicant requests a full bond release in connection with completed major subdivision. Is the applicant with us? If not, Mr. Gonzalez, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, just staff report tonight. This 5-lot major subdivision was last heard in October 2018 for the acceptance of new bonds for the development. Since that time, all improvements have been satisfactorily completed per the Department of Public Works and the Engineering Division, and the road that was constructed has weathered the standard 1 year, as is typical protocol for developments in the town of Islip for new subdivisions. At this time, the town engineer has recommended the following: full release of surety bond number EAIC 205-00001 in the amount of $86,029, and the cash bond receipt number 39965 in the amount of $5,000, subject to town board acceptance of the road extension for dedication. Staff has been working with the applicant in obtaining the paperwork. They actually sent over some additional documents earlier today, which have not been reviewed yet, but we should have a full submission completed very shortly, and then we will bring that to town board for acceptance for the road. So based on that, staff recommends the board grant the full bond release subject to town board acceptance of the dedication.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Gonzalez? Not anticipating any or seeing any, I'm going to ask for a motion. Mr. Matamore.
I'll make a motion to grant the application that's laid out by Mr. Tanner.
There is a motion by Mr. Matamore to grant the application as laid out by Mr. Gonzalez. Is there a second?
I'm sorry, Mr. Gonzalez.
Mr. Moriarty, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted. Thank you. Item 8 on the agenda, planning board application decision item, Amal Pingling, PB 2019-034, southeast corner of Carlton Avenue, County Route 17, number 51, and Fisher Avenue, Islip Terrace. Applicant requests a planning board special permit for a minor restaurant in the general service T district pursuant to 68-489.1A. Site plan modifications may be requested as part of this application. Good evening to the applicant.
Sorry about that. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Joseph F. Bazell. The firm is Bazell, Blanda, Visconti. We are, okay, I'll do it again.
We got you. We see you in here. You're good.
Okay. We were retained after the hearing on this particular matter. We have been working with the planning department since we became involved. Since it is a decision item, I would refrain from comments until after the staff report.
Okay, then why don't we go ahead and hear from Ms. Wozniak, and then we'll come back with questions and anything further you'd like to add.
All right, thank you. This application was brought before the board last year and was reserved because the church was operating within the building without a CO, and a true parking relaxation couldn't be determined. Since the public hearing, the church has filed for the required change of use application, and it has been determined that a 67% parking relaxation is required for the church and the proposed minor restaurant. At the public hearing, residents complained about parking issues and a petition was submitted against the application. The applicant has since provided a parking study that was conducted in mid-March, and it shows parking deficiencies on Wednesday and Thursday evenings, which coincides with the church's schedule. It is also important to note that this study was conducted with 2 vacant tenant spaces on site. In addition, it is also noteworthy to mention that the basement itself requires 14 parking spaces. However, even without counting the required basement parking, the parking relaxation would still be significant at about 55%. The church has stated that they do not perform weddings or rent out space for events, and they're closed on Fridays. Unfortunately, there are no municipal parking lots nearby, and the roadways adjacent to the site are too narrow for on-street parking. Staff has prepared 2 sets of conditions, one granting just the minor restaurant portion of the application, and the other one granting a parking relaxation for both the church and restaurant, should the board feel the applicant has addressed all concerns regarding the parking deficiencies.
Mr. Bazell.
Yeah, I would add the restaurant is takeout only. They do not serve meals on premises. People either come to pick them up, or today many people have them delivered through various delivery services. The church has very limited hours. As mentioned, they don't do weddings, they don't do receptions. It's a small site with a small congregation. The overflow on the couple of evenings was only by a couple of vehicles or a few vehicles. There is some parking permitted on the side street. For most of the time, it's not used. For most of the hours that the restaurant operates, the church is not in operation. It's a small church. People with a small congregation, all they do is hold religious services and some prayer meetings. They don't have any events, be they weddings or otherwise. So it is actually a very mild use of that particular site. We did do a complete parking study. We have reviewed the covenants, and the covenants have been accepted by the applicant. It's a tough building to find tenants for, and retail is not permitted in GST, which is the zone the site is in. The restaurant is only takeout. The church has been there for quite some years. The parking situation that is presently affecting the neighborhood is the result of an automotive use across the intersection. We don't dispute that, but that's not part of this application. We seek only a takeout restaurant, and for a church that's small and long-standing to continue.
Thank you. So the church right now is not operating there, is not permitted to operate there, correct? You've not?
The church, when it moved in, never got the appropriate permits.
Okay, so, and before us right now is to seek to, I only see for the restaurant is what's before us now, correct?
That's what I have on the agenda, correct?
And 67% is the parking relaxation with, and that's Kelly configured as a takeout restaurant, or that change? I know the covenants say takeout only.
It's takeout only, that's all that's sought. Nobody dines on premises. The parking does include the church.
So Ms. Wozniak, with the covenants being takeout, is there any difference in the parking that's required for takeout versus a sit-in restaurant? And has that been accounted for?
For this particular restaurant, no, because of the size of it, it's quite small. But they aren't doing seating in order to kind of help because the parking relaxation is so high. That way people aren't sitting and occupying the parking spaces for so long.
Okay, is there further questions, Mr. Frugieri?
Yeah, what about the two vacant tenant spaces? I mean, there's a significant parking shortfall with just assuming a takeout restaurant and a small church congregation. We also have two vacant tenant spaces that could add to this issue.
When those tenants come in, if and when, we would have to come back. Who knows if the church is still here at that point?
Ms. Wozniak, what do you account for in the parking numbers for the two vacancies? Is there any calculation for them, or is it nothing for those two vacant units?
So there's 4 commercial units in the building. 1 will be the church. 1 is a nail salon currently. The 1 vacant one will be the minor restaurant. And then the other vacant space is CO'd as office use. So it was 1 per 200 for the vacant space.
And that's what you have in the current calculation?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's all taken into account for the 67% relaxation.
Correct. Just I was noting that for the parking study, obviously the minor restaurant's not there. And then there's the vacant office space.
So there's only 1 vacant space. Okay.
Yes.
And now, Ms. Wozniak, refresh my memory on this. I don't remember which church this is. Was there one of the churches when they spoke that they were not going to have outside, they're not going to lease out the space for weddings, but members, parishioners, family could do weddings there? Was this that church, or was that a different church?
That is a different church.
Okay.
According to this applicant, they don't do any sort of big events like that.
Okay. And I guess my concern is, so if we approve the restaurant this evening, it's the church is still not operating there.
The church has to get a change. The church, the parking required for the church is included in this application. The church has to finish out the permitting after tonight, as does the restaurant. The restaurant is not there.
I'm just, Ms. Wozniak, maybe you can explain. So our approval tonight, they still need to come back before us for approval for the church? Or once this relaxation is done, it's done and that's it? There's no requirement to get approval from us?
Yeah, so the church only needs a parking relaxation from the board. If you look in the packet, I drafted 2 separate conditions. One is just approval of the minor restaurant for the parking relaxation, and then the other one is for both the church and the restaurant for the relaxation of parking.
And I'm just reading that. What restrictions, what covenants and restrictions do you have in place for the church if it's approved for the entire? Do we?
Nothing specifically, but if the church ever changes a use to something else that requires a parking relaxation, they have to come back before the board.
There's no objection to that.
That way it's specifically tied to a church use.
I'm just pulling it up on my other screen. My other question was really, are we talking about no weddings, no events, or any of those?
I didn't add those stipulations in, but I definitely can.
There's no objection to that.
Or even hours of operation. I didn't add any of that specifically, but I definitely can draft something like
that would be my only concern of going forward on the entire thing, would be not having CNRs in place that would, protect from larger gatherings and more parking being needed. Mr. Bruno?
Yeah, the concern I have, Mr. Chairman, is that the call of the meeting doesn't mention the church at all. And so it says a special permit for a minor restaurant. So I don't know if we would have gotten other people interested in this application to speak on the church.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the portion that says site plan modifications may be requested as part of this application.
Yeah, but it seems to imply to me, Kelly, that
Just for the,
just for the minor restaurants.
Yeah.
Homeowners in the area might have come out and said that there was a real problem with the church parking issue. In other words, I'm saying, let's suppose I live next door. I might say, I don't have a problem with that, but the church has been a real problem. But this doesn't read to me like that's what they were doing. So that's my only concern on this.
Ms. Wozniak, do you remember the call for the original public hearing?
it was this call.
The exact same call?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Bazell, are you saying something? You were muted. You're on mute.
While I was not at the hearing, it's my understanding that the people who spoke did speak about the parking for the church.
Correct. Some did. I think to Mr. Bruno's point, whether or not more would have came out knowing that it was the church as opposed to a minor restaurant there, I don't know the answer to. I would agree with Mr. Bruno's concern that he's raised. I mean, if we're considering both, I think it should be clear from both that we're considering both the public hearing and the decision item.
As I was not at the original public hearing, nor involved in how it was noticed. So,
right. So my concern would be if we were to go ahead on the restaurant only. Well, what does that do for? How does just explain to me the logistics? That we approve a restaurant use in there for relaxation only for the restaurant, assuming that the church space is used as what type of space? How did you figure out the park?
There would have to be enough of a parking relaxation to account for the takeout restaurant, and the church would have to be treated as a permissible use.
Right. So,
like, let's say office use would be permissible in that zone.
Right. So that's my question, Ms. Wozniak. How did you, when you did the calculation, what did you calculate the church space as for the approving the restaurant only?
Well, in the covenants, we never put an exact parking percentage as far as the relaxation. So if you look in the language, it just says it's specifically tied for the minor restaurant only. And then the second set says it's for the church and the restaurant.
Right.
It's not a specific percentage that I put in there.
Okay. I guess the larger question for the board is, would you be okay going forward on the restaurant when the church right now is not properly in there in terms of they don't have a parking relaxation for it and they're operating?
Mr. Chairman, I think we have to revise the call of the meeting and do this again and include a restaurant. I agree with Member Bruno that it's the call is a little deceiving from the public's perspective.
Okay, is all in agreement with Mr. Ferrugiari's point, Mr. Bruno's point? Mr. Bazell, do you want anything further?
No, just for point of clarification, that would mean we're coming back for a new hearing.
Correct.
A new public hearing.
Correct.
Do we need to file anything else, or is the matter simply going to be renoticed and rescheduled?
Renotice and rescheduled, and I'll have to write a new call for you.
That's fine. I understand.
So do we adjourn this for the motion to adjourn the hearing for a renotice?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Ferrugiari to adjourn for the matter to be renoticed. Is there a second?
I would second.
Mr. Moriarty seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Thank you. I think you're sticking with us, Mr. Bazell, right?
Yeah,
Town board application. Town board application. Recommendation item, IA Holdings LLC, CZ 2017-019, northwest corner of Suffolk Avenue, County Route 100, and Eastern Avenue, Brentwood, 849 Suffolk Avenue. Applicant requests a change of zone from Residence AAA District to Business 3 District and Residence CA District in order to maintain a portion of the existing horse farm and redevelop the remainder of the parcel with 180 apartments. Applicant also requests town board approval to utilize increased density permitted in the CA District pursuant to Town Code Section 68-173.1. Applicant further requests town board special permit for a fast food restaurant in the Business 3 District pursuant to 68-302G. Site plan modifications are required as part of this application. Good evening.
Good evening again. For the record, Joseph F. Bazell, Blanda Visconti, 535 Broad Hollow Road, Suite B4 in Melville. We had a hearing on this matter back in September. There was a prior hearing going back into 2017. With a lot of revisions have happened along the way. We have received covenants from the planning department. They are, we worked them out. They are acceptable. I would defer to the staff report at this time.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Mr. Colgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application was last heard at the July 15th, 2020 hearing. Traffic and school impacts were the primary concerns raised at that time. The board reserved decision and directed the applicant to amend the expanded environmental assessment form in light of the modified project. As the number of apartment units was significantly reduced from the initial project, the anticipated impacts were also reduced. As indicated at prior hearings, this application provides a unique opportunity to provide a transit-oriented apartment complex, while at the same time preserving a component of the historic use of the property. Based on the foregoing, the staff recommends that the board grant the application subject to the attached covenants and restrictions.
Thank you. Ms. Bazell, do you want to add anything before we go to questions?
How could I possibly add to that?
Questions for Mr. Bazell? So, Mr. Bazell, I guess my one concern is the traffic in the area. I understand they've accepted it, but can we talk about the need for both having the 180 units as well as a fast food retail and then the fast food on top of that?
The site is configured into kind of three areas. The apartment complex, which is located on the easterly side. The horse farm, which presently occupies the site, will be scaled back into the northwest corner as appears on the site plan. The site is directly across Suffolk Avenue from the Brentwood train station. In fact, the light at the intersection is also for the train station parking lot. The retail use is designed to serve commuters as well as people in the area. It's common, the fast food restaurant that's desired is for a coffee shop of some sort. So people who are taking the train, utilizing public transit, can be able to get something to eat or drink before they catch the train or after they get off the train. A lot of the, it is available for people in this complex to simply walk across the street to take the Long Island Railroad. And at least some of them will certainly take advantage of the ability to do that. That's a drawing aspect of a TOD development. So the retail is on Suffolk Avenue. It is across the street from the train station. It's very well suited. It will meet its parking requirements, and it has not been used in the calculations for the remainder of the site. The apartments and the horse farm are part of the same CA zoning. The town amended the code to allow recreational uses as part of that. That enables us to preserve the horse farm, which has been a longstanding asset to the area. And it will be improved, upgraded, refurbished, new parking area, and it will maintain its existing access, which is separate and apart from the access to the apartments and for the commercial property.
I guess my concern is too much going on in there. And again, how many entryways and exitways are there for the development?
There's a main entrance which has a light and provides access to the apartments and the commercial component. There is a separate entrance which provides access to the horse farm. That is how the horse farm accesses now. The horse farm also has a limited purpose existing access on the west that it uses in a limited way to bring some animals in and out. But the primary access for the horse farm is the existing entrance on Suffolk Avenue. The fast food and retail component also has a right turn out option for people exiting, so they do not have to queue up at the light. They can simply come onto the traffic on Suffolk Avenue. Traffic has been reviewed by the town as well as the county. And it's a 17-acre site. It's a large site, and the horse farm is being preserved as an important part of that. But to preserve the horse farm, you need to have density allocated elsewhere.
Yep, I hear what you're saying. From my perspective, it's a little bit too much on that site. Mr. Moriarty?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of observations and questions I would start with. One, yeah, you are, I understand you're keeping the horse farm in place, which is clearly a nice objective, an attempt to meet some of the community concerns. But you're jamming 100, squeezing 180 units onto effectively what looks like maybe 50, 75, 66% of the site. So you've got a very heavy concentration and density issue there, which troubles me. That's number one. Number two, as far as I understand, there's no limitation on you coming back and building out the horse farm, 3 years after completing the 180 units right next door.
No, we're not allowed to. We're not allowed to do that. The density on the horse farm property is transferred
completely
to the,
so
the balance.
Okay, so there's no further development permissible on the horse farm property.
Only for horse farm related purposes. If they wanted to take a barn down and build a new barn, they could do that. You could not put residential units. You could not put a commercial building.
Okay.
It has to be used for recreational purposes.
Okay, all right. That alleviates a little bit of that concern. It's still a very heavy concentration and density though on the remaining portion of the parcel, most of which is pushed up against what are all single-family residential homes on the adjoining site, on the adjoining parcels. That's number one. Number two, on the traffic issue, with all due respect to the traffic consultants, personal experience, in my view, outweighs some of these professional evaluations that are being submitted, both town consultant as well as consultants that have been engaged by the property owner. Look, I drive Suffolk Avenue. I've been down in Brentwood. It routinely backs up in all directions. In some cases, all the way back to Knoll Farm. I golf at the Brentwood Country Club, which is literally about a quarter of a mile north of this site. And traffic is absolutely abysmal along Suffolk Avenue. And for a consultant to say there's no additional increase in traffic with a unit, a property, a project of this size and density right there, with the train station and all the traffic that the train station attracts, I question that conclusion. Let's kind of leave it at that. In the last public hearing, I raised a question about sewer, and I was told that you were working on a hookup to the Entenmann's sewage treatment plant, which is in North Bayshore, quite frankly, a distance from this site. Where are you on that?
They have had a series of discussions and negotiations about extending that sewer pipe. They've also retained an engineer to do preliminary evaluations to determine a route and determine a cost. However, to go forward with the connection agreements is in and of itself a significant costly undertaking. So they and the Entenmann's people have been waiting on the applications.
I understand it's a complicated issue, but it's one that's got to be buttoned down. I mean, sewer is a critical issue of this site. You feel you have the ability to go under the Long Island Railroad in order to achieve that connection?
There are the engineers have looked at where that crossing would occur, and they believe they can accommodate it. Obviously, we have a plan that is based on a sewer main extension. So if we didn't get the sewer main extension, we can't meet the sanitary requirements. We can't build this project. So we would have to come back or completely reconfigure the job to attempt to do it without the sewer project. The sewer main, extending the sewer main, while costly, building an STP is a costly endeavor too. And if we had to build an STP, there'd be no horse farm.
Well, that's kind of where I was going. If that falls apart, what's your plan B? Because the neighbors have raised sewage as a potential issue. And if a sewage treatment plant is being built, in their neighborhood, I think they should know about that.
They would. Like I said, we're here on this particular project. If we have to make such a major reconfiguration, we're going to have to come back. My clients feel comfortable they will get the sewer main extension. And it avoids having to build an STP, which I think is something in the interest of everybody. And it also brings a main up into this area, which it is possible somebody could tap into for other purposes.
No, I believe it would be a very, very, good outcome. I just have serious questions about the reality of that. So that's the only reason I'm raising it as a potential concern. And if that concern is not satisfied, the only alternative would be build a sewage treatment plant on the property. And I don't know if we grant this, that you necessarily have to come back to us at the planning board in order to build a sewage treatment plant.
Well, also this application is based on the section of the town code that involves preserving that horse farm. So if we don't fit into that code section any longer, if we don't, and we could not do what we're proposing here without coming back, it's a complete change of events.
Okay. But sort of recapturing or regathering on that concept that was raised by the chairman, I do have some significant concerns about the density. The fact we've got 180 units and effectively a small shopping center built into a very tightly packed site, does cause me great concern.
I mean, it's been worked on not only by my clients, but with the planning department. And it's been scaled back a number of times. On the northerly side, the closest line is over 50 feet, and it peels and it gets even longer as you move to the west. We provide enough parking, or we provide more than ample parking. Whenever you are shifting density around, and that's the concept that underlines preserving the horse farm, is transferring density. You're transferring what could have been apartments on that area to the remaining portion of that site. So you're getting the benefit of keeping that area as a horse farm and open space by shifting the density to the remainder of the lot. So it does make it a little denser, but it's not like these buildings are on top of each other. And the benefit is you are preserving the recreational use and the open space. The commercial portion is a 6,000 square foot building. It's not a big building. And it has enough parking to be self-sufficient. It's on Suffolk Avenue. It's not tucked into the site. And it's across the street from a train station. So it does work as a component of the job. And by putting the horse farm access on a separate driveway, you avoid having anybody who's bringing horses to or from the site from having to drive through the site. So it keeps the horse farm there, but it makes it bifurcates the access so it doesn't congest the rest of the traffic. And there is a light there.
I understand what you're trying to accomplish. It just, as I said, for a number of different reasons, for the sewage issue, which I think is still a major question mark, for the traffic concerns that I think are already in place and will likely be increased with a project of this size. And then the density issue with commercial as well as residential on this one site, it seems like a lot to sort of bite off and chew. That's my hesitation.
I think the sewage issue, you can't, you're not going to get to do the actual agreements until everybody knows there's a project. And so, it's kind of putting the cart before the horse. I can't get a building permit. I can't build the job that I've got on the site plan without that sewer main extension. So if I don't get it, the project we're looking at is just not a project. So there's plenty of protection on that issue. And we've scaled back a number of times. We've reconfigured a number of times, but to make this work and preserve the horse farm, the trade-off is the density is shifted off the horse farm lot to the remainder of the site. As a business 3 parcel, it stands on its own. It's not, that area is not being used in the density calculations for the apartments. It's standalone business 3 property that meets code.
Just to go back on that a little bit, Mr. Colgan, what is, it's currently residence AAA, correct?
That is correct.
Which permits what?
Commits one single family dwelling for every 40,000 square feet.
So how many single family dwellings would go there if it's the residence AAA even getting rid of the horse farm?
I mean, I don't have a formal subdivision plan in front of me, but approximately that would permit 17 single family homes.
Okay, so Mr. Mazzelli, I understand the point, or you're making in response to Mr. Moriarty's question, but if it were left the way it was in the current zoning, you would have 17 single family homes, where granting something, you're setting aside a piece of the property for the horse farm, but you're getting up 180 units, where 17 single family homes would be. And then in addition to that, we're asking for retail and fast food. We're asking for everything. I think we're getting a little greedy in terms of what we're asking for in return for that, is my point.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
With traffic in that street in Suffolk Avenue.
I mean, you don't get large properties located across the street from railroad stations very frequently. There are virtually none anywhere. This is the opportunity to do a transit-oriented housing project. This is such a project, and it's a unique and pivotal location. It will play a very positive role in upgrading Suffolk Avenue. It can be an anchor for further revitalization of Suffolk Avenue. And it's an opportunity that doesn't come along very frequently. But as you start to lose density, that sewer main extension just doesn't make sense economically anymore. And the project at some point doesn't make sense economically anymore. And so at best you keep the horse farm, or you wind up with people seeking to rezone for very different things. It's a unique opportunity to put a TOD housing project across the street from a train station. That doesn't happen very much. I cannot think of a lot this size in this proximity to a train station on Long Island that I've ever seen.
Mr. Chairman, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Ruggieri. Do you have a point? Do you want to
Yes. I think, retaining the horse farm is admirable. It's a great goal to achieve. I think establishing a TOD development is another critical thing, something that Long Island needs more of. But I agree with the previous speakers that this is really a lot in what looks like a big lot of 17 acres. There's an awful lot stuffed in this. Even if you account for the area for the horse farm, you're still at 10.5 units per acre, plus 5,000 square foot of retail. And while I understand you need to have a return on investment and something that helps support the preservation of the horse farm, I am a little bit concerned about the traffic numbers that we saw this afternoon that was circulated to the board members. And I think, and as far as sewers are concerned, having the connection to the Entenmann's line is critical. And if that were not to come to fruition through negotiations with the Suffolk County Department of Health and DPW, I think it would spark a substantial enough change in this application where it would have to come back to us. So I'm not, while I'm concerned about sewers, I think if the connection wasn't made, I'm not concerned about them going ahead and building a sewer treatment plant without coming back to us. I think they would have to come back to us. But one of the things that I'm thinking of that may be a mitigating factor from a traffic standpoint is the retail. I mean, the retail component, whether it's dry retail or the fast food. The fast food sort of scares me with the number of trips that they could generate and the amount of area that takes up. I'm also concerned with the 3,000 square foot of dry retail that's proposed here. I think as we go throughout our communities and our downtowns, there's abundance of vacant retail. I think the last thing we need is additional vacant retail. Has your client ever considered removing the commercial component of this project altogether and maybe reducing some of the trip generation numbers that way?
The commercial component has been around since a prior project on this site that was around when the town was considering the master plan, and it was actually added as a suggestion from the planners at the time because it was a railroad-oriented operation, and that was felt to be a positive. I would also note that the covenants limit the type of fast food restaurant to a coffee shop. It can't be anything. You cannot put a hamburger place in it. So it's not a blanket fast food restaurant. It's a limited, it's fast food only to the extent it has a drive-through, but it would be a coffee shop type of a use, which is primarily a morning-oriented use because of the train station. But it's easy for anyone to access, including people on Suffolk Avenue. Pull in, get your coffee and your breakfast, pull out. Pull directly across the street at a regulated intersection and take the train. As far as retail is concerned, look, there's dark retail everywhere at the moment, but the new retail is always desirable. This retail would have a brand new parking lot associated with it, which does make it more attractive in many ways, both to vendors and to customers. Downtowns are great, but you have to be prepared to park and walk. On a site with a parking lot, you have the ability to come in and come right back to your car in a very short distance. And this would be a brand new parking lot. Parking lots on Suffolk Avenue are not all the best, but we're not talking McDonald's here. We're talking a very small operation, and a small 3,000 square feet of retail is not a big number. A 2,000 square foot coffee shop is not a big operation. They're both very modest.
But even a small coffee shop, 2,000 square foot coffee shop with a takeout or drive-through window could generate a lot of traffic. And I'm be curious to see what the elimination of the commercial space would do to the trip generation numbers.
While we've been here, I've been receiving messages from my client, which indicates that the commercial use and the drive-through is pivotal to making the economics work. Without it, the numbers don't work. And it's a good project. And you need the density to be able to do the sewer main extension. Without the sewer, without the income stream, doesn't justify the main extension, nor does it justify preserving the horse farm, which is really a labor of love to my client and not like a profit generator.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak?
Mr. Bruno, do you have questions?
Yeah. I'll give you my opinion on it. My family moved to Brentwood in 1960. I grew up there. I know this very well. My brother, for example, still owns the house my family bought. And I'm a graduate of Brentwood High School. So I just want you to understand, I know this really well. And I have some familiarity with the horse farm. Here's my problem with this, Mr. Bazell. What it doesn't do, you keep talking about preserving the horse farm, and I've been in there. I'm very familiar with it. The problem is that when you talk to the neighbors, what they're upset about, what they were really upset about, is what happens when you drive down Suffolk Avenue. And what's interesting is you may be preserving the horse farm, and I can appreciate that, and I understand what you're saying. And I realize that what I'm about to say may not make any sense, but just to tell you, if you were preserving the horse farm on Suffolk Avenue, then the neighbors and the look that they're all in love with, they would still see if the apartments were all put back. Now, again, this doesn't help with the traffic or whatever, but I'm saying from this point of view here, the neighborhood, the Brentwood neighborhood, isn't really going to get any benefit of the preserving of the horse farm from the aesthetic view. Whether there would be apartments there or not, they're not going to see it, and they're going to lose a horse farm from their viewpoint. Okay, so I'm just saying, I agree with the transit-oriented development. I appreciate trying to preserve the horse farm, but I'm saying that this layout, as it is, doesn't really put those in the best order, in the best layout. I'm saying, and I realize the horse farm exists where it is now, but I'm saying if I would wanted to lay this out to have these two together, I would have the horse farm would be what you would see on Suffolk Avenue, and the apartments would be tucked back in the corner. So I just wanted to make that observation, because I'm just thinking about what it's like when you drive down Suffolk Avenue, and it would have been nice to preserve that look. I think that's what a lot of the residents were talking about.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bazell, I think you muted.
That's a new comment and obviously a complete redesign. That would also, part of the aim was to try to leave much of the back, not put the buildings close to the rear line. You put the horse farm up front, you're going to push those buildings into the back. And that was also a concern. A lot of the horse farm improvements are existing, which is also a concern. And I'm not sure, I'm not a horse person, but I'm not sure if those horses were in proximity to Suffolk Avenue most of their day, whether that may be disturbing to them.
Thank you. Mr. Matamore, did you have a question?
Well, a question and a comment. The question involves the retail. You've talked about dry retail and a coffee shop. And certainly the coffee shop seems to fit in with the idea of being across the street from the railroad. But the retail, I don't now haven't had a chance to learn what that retail is intended to be. But Mr. Bazell, is there any ideas yet what that retail is planned to be? We know the coffee shop, but the retail puzzles me. What is that going to be used for? If you,
My client doesn't have any tenants or prospective tenants for that building. Anybody he was talking to, in the past has disappeared with COVID. It's not a big space. The space it's not going to be a restaurant. It would look to be something that would be more designed to serve the apartments and serve the local community. But I don't want to tell you there's a tenant for it or it's been locked down for a particular type of use, because that's not the case.
okay. Well, and which leads me to the second thought, and No Farms has been around now as a question mark for probably 40 years as far as its zoning is concerned. It's AAA zoning. It's 40,000 square foot zoning. It's our AAA zoning, and for many years there were efforts by various persons to try and develop it with larger lots. And those applications we're forgetting about never went anywhere. And I was aware, for example, too, of the cost of a horse farm on Long Island, or indeed any farm, but particularly horse farms that require a lot of traffic movements from out of state to bring supplies in, has become prohibitive because Long Island's traffic is a problem, and the owners of those types of uses are really being eliminated, not because of the traffic on Suffolk Avenue or anything like that, but the traffic on Long Island going from here to the bridges. And I know one of the former owners, for example, of, I believe, this parcel, ended up having to move to Kentucky in order to continue to do what they're doing. Now we're faced with a project that's right across from the station, and I think we've been referring to it as a TOD. And that concept that was started for real in Bayshore, I would say, by the town boards in the 80s and 90s, as something that is developing or changing, perhaps a better word, the demographics of Long Island. And the idea, and we've got two projects moving forward, they're not approved by the town board yet, but they have passed muster with our board to take into consideration that thought, and that the times of changing, certainly AAA in Brentwood, or indeed on almost any town. I'm not trying to pick on Brentwood. We all remember Gene Murphy wanting to have, and Gene's was a very wonderful planner and very anxious to try and keep AAA zonings alive in the various hamlets. That's become more and more difficult. It's not, times have changed. And so that's just a small portion of what we're discussing here. But, and I hear the chairman saying, it reminds me of Maurice O'Connell's famous line that you're trying to put 10 pounds of cement in a 5-pound bag. He usually would not go through a planning board hearing without saying that, because there'd always be an application that was too much. Well, this is an effort by the applicant to try and accommodate keeping the horse farm, which is, we all agree, is laudable. And whenever you do that, you're right that you end up putting a lot of your density in one portion of the property. So it's a long way of maybe a little history. And I lived through and watched that history from, the mid-70s to present. And the one thing I came up with is that the demographics of a TOD are becoming more and more necessary for Suffolk County. Do we like that? Probably not, because we like the rural appearance of it and the horse farm, or the other farms for that matter. But times change. And if this can be a successful project and utilize the apartments that are proposed, there is some major philosophical reasons to listen to that. And So my thought was perhaps that if we could still scale down the non-coffee type, coffee shop type of retail use, that it's an effort to scale it down a bit without giving up the densities that are necessary to make it work, and still incorporating the idea that the traffic issue may not nearly be as serious as we're concerned about, because the demographics are changing, and there are all kinds of people in Bayshore now who are between the ages of 25 and 40 that are giving up the automobile as two cars per unit. I'm one that's believing that change is slowly happening for all our hamlets. And if the town board was right in the 80s and 90s, this was a way to keep the economy moving with the jobs necessary and housing and population that will help these hamlets to flourish. But you're right, the many of my colleagues are right to be concerned about traffic and the traffic problem. Well, the answer to that is, was the town board right or wrong that a lot of these will not cause the traffic that might have been expected? So with that, there's more comments, but this is the time to bring up those comments, I think, and perhaps your client may consider if there's some way of making it, and he's done this already, I'm told, that one thing that seems obvious that maybe could be eliminated would be dry retail, which sounds to me like mostly a function of rents, not a function of something that's going to necessarily serve the people in this complex, other than for, we want the people who live here to shop in Brentwood and not go to other hamlets to do so, and to develop this as an area that can survive on its own and not have the population here or in Brentwood itself have to go to Bayshore or Huntington or Babylon or whatever to do their shopping. So there's a number of philosophical concepts that come together here. And yes, it's sort of projecting where the future is going. This project at least attempts to do that. And we as the planning board are trying to juggle with making it work without, of course, being a detriment to the homeowners, who, some of whom, of course, and many of whom are worried about traffic getting far worse. I'm not one of them. I don't believe that it will get far worse, and the traffic engineers seem to agree, but I can understand where there's an argument that it would. Well, that's what we're asked to wrestle with, and not to turn down a project that has been in and through the planning board stages and development stages for literally 40 years, and it hasn't been moved because the zoning no longer fits. Perhaps this zoning, if massaged the right way, will fit. And I agree, it's not going to happen if the sewer problem is not resolved. And that's a big if, I'm sure, from the developer's point of view, and indeed from the town board's point of view, in a potential STP that used to be the salvage of all these projects, maybe not so much anymore. Okay, enough said, but I wanted to sort of share that because I have a long history of watching the Knoll farms. I had one myself many years ago, but saw several other attorneys bring them in, and the AAA zoning just didn't work. And indeed, I'm not sure that this kind of an idea may have a much better likelihood of success and help the Brentwood area and not hurt it. Thank you. I'm sorry to talk so long. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Matamore. Further questions from the board? Mr. Bezell, is there any room for you to talk to your clients on some of the suggestions that were raised by some of the board members this evening?
Well, I think given the comments we've heard, for me to go back to speak with my client and for us to speak further with planning is the way to go at this point. Certainly things need to be reviewed and evaluated, if only for everybody to satisfy themselves that every effort was made to do so.
Great. Thank you on that. With that, I'll take that as a motion for us to reserve decision tonight so you can have those discussions and come back before the board.
Understood.
Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman, since I did more talking than I should. I'll be happy to do that.
Motion by Mr. Matamore.
I make that motion that you just suggested.
Motion by Mr. Matamore to reserve decision this evening. Is there a second to that?
I would second.
Was that Mr. Moriarty?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions were reserved. Thank you. Item 10 on the agenda, Town Board Application 227 4th Avenue Bayshore LLC, CZ 2019-020, southeast corner of 4th Avenue and Cherry Street, Bayshore, 227 4th Avenue. Applicant requests a change of zone from Industrial 1 District to Downtown Development District in order to construct a mixed-use building with 30 apartments. Site plan modifications are required as part of this application. Good evening, Mr. Bazell. Is that you again? Or is that Mr. Glass? Or do I have? Is the applicant here on item 10? Mr. Glass? Mr. Bazell? Anyone? There we go. Oop.
Hello?
There you go. You're back.
There he is.
There you go. Mr. Glass, who's also with us, is the principal of 227 4th Avenue Bayshore Associates. For the record, Joseph F. Bazell, Land of Visconti, 535 Broad Hollow Road, Suite B4 in Melville. This application was before the board a couple months ago, a few months, well, it was before pre-COVID actually. We have been working with planning. We've made a number of changes since that time. We pulled out 8 units, so we're down to 22 apartments, down from 30. They will be 18 one-bedrooms and 4 studios. That reduces our required parking from 66 to 52. A lot of that comes from a 2,000 square foot commercial tenancy. There's only one. It's a mixed-use building. It is immediately adjacent to the Brentwood train station. So the tenant in that case would be looking to serve train station customers as well. We've reviewed the covenants, worked that out with planning. The site is now vacant and dilapidated. This would be a very positive redevelopment of this property in downtown Bayshore.
Thank you. I just note for the record, it's the Bayshore train station, not the Brentwood train station.
Oh, sorry about that.
I will go to Mr. Colgan for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application was previously heard on December 12th of last year. Primary concerns at that time were the height of the building and the amount of parking provided. Since that time, the applicant has provided a flat roof to reduce the height of the building. The number of units have been reduced to provide a similar parking ratio to that what was approved for the Tritech development further south. The applicant will be providing decorative streetlights and money as part of the requirements for the downtown development district, which would go towards improvements to the train station or downtown Bayshore. Based on the applicant's compliance with the intent and spirit of the downtown development district, the staff has no objection to the application and recommends that the board grant the application subject to the attached covenants and restrictions.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant or Ms. Colgan? Looks like an easy one. Ms. Colgan, just to clarify, the parking relaxation is the same percentage as Tritech overall for the project, or just for the?
Not overall, it was based on the number of units provided. Given that it's a mixed use development, the staff recommended that the applicant reduce it with that specific ratio in mind, because we don't anticipate that the parking demand of the commercial unit would conflict much with that of the residential units.
So what would be the relaxation if you took in, do you know the percentage, if you took into account the number of spots, if you took into account the
Yep, I can get that for you right
non-residential?
now.
And just the one question I put out there as you're calculating that for us, we continually hear, and maybe Mr. Mazzelli could speak to this, or Mr. Colgan, that because they're transit-oriented developments, people walk to the train station and don't use their cars. So the cars would still be parked there. It's not like they're leaving for work. And then the retail uses can get used to those same spots because people aren't there. We can't have it both ways, that we need less parking because there are less cars because people are not driving.
Yeah, I mean, we would never represent that every single tenant is using the train station. What we would represent is if you were to use the train station, you might forego one vehicle or drive it less. Again, TOD doesn't mean that everybody's using the train. It just means less driving, which is one of the things we strive for when we make these land use decisions. So yes, there might still be some vehicles remaining there, but based on comparable developments that we base the parking ratios on, we would anticipate still that it would conflict with the commercial use. We would still anticipate that some of those residential tenants would still be driving to work elsewhere on the island, not necessarily taking the train.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I like the development. I think it does clean up that corner. I'm grateful that they dropped the number of units. I just would like to know that percentage that we're granting. And the only reason I want to make sure we have enough parking spots there is the development directly to the north, which is my concern, which is if you drive down that street anytime during the day, 4th Avenue, you know, it's a tight run because there are cars parked up and down both sides of that street.
So if you were to assume that all the units were parked during their peak periods, the overall parking relaxation would be approximately 36%.
Okay.
It's generally higher than your run-of-the-mill application, but given the consideration that it's near the train station, it's a mixed-use development, we don't think that's out of line with comparable developments in downtown Bayshore.
Great, thank you. Further questions? Not, Mr. Ruggieri?
No.
Oh, okay. Not seeing anything further.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I would just make an observation. I'm supportive of the project. I think it's a very good location to sort of take a step of cleaning, making sort of further progress with improving properties north of the train station. We've done a lot of work over the last 10 years or so south of the train station. Not a lot has drifted north. So for that reason, I think it's a good project. I'm supportive. Couple of sort of observations. I would want to make sure we don't sort of set a public precedent that what we did in Tri-Tech is what all the other developers in Bayshore and elsewhere can suddenly use as the formula for their argument to suggest that similar relaxations are needed or appropriate. So I say that first and foremost. And then secondly, I do want us as a board to start thinking a little bit about this whole concept of rentals in Bayshore and whether we're sort of hitting a point at which we need to see the projects get digested, get absorbed before we keep approving projects in the back end. I'm not tainting anything or prejudging any project, but I think we all recognize that there's going to be a lot of strain on the infrastructure within Bayshore once all these units come on. This project shouldn't be prejudiced by that. But I just think that we need to be sensitive as a board to make sure that future projects do make sense, and that more importantly, the projects we have approved, can get properly absorbed over time. So just an observation, General.
Thank you, Mr. Moriarty. Any further questions from the board? And I echo Mr. Moriarty's concerns as well. As we have Tri-Tech that's been approved. We have the other project directly on the railroad tracks on the north side of the tracks that's been approved. We have the Gargano property. I don't remember the name of it. That's going up on Park Avenue between Park and 4th, I believe it is, or Park and, I think it's Park and 4th. That's going up over there, which has a significant number of units. And there are a couple of smaller buildings that have just gone up on, whether it be South Clinton or 5th or whatever, that have some units in as well. Not only take that into account, but also take into account all the traffic that's being added to the area, which is already getting bad. So the hospital parking garage and what they're going to be coming in before this board as well in the near future. So certainly, this is one of the smaller projects. They certainly took our concerns to heart and dropped the size of the project, and dropping from 30 to 22 is 8 units. So that's a significant number in terms of the size of the project. So they were listening and took it into account. So that being said, no more questions. Is there anything further, Mr. Bazell?
No, I'm good unless if there are no questions, I'm good.
Okay, is there a motion? Mr. Moriarty?
Yes, I would move to approve the application subject to any covenants and restrictions that have been negotiated with the planning board and the applicant.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Moriarty to grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Frugieri. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
The motion by Mr. Matamore.
To adjourn.
Second.
I'll second.
By Moriarty. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We're adjourned. Have a good night. All stay safe.
Good night.
See you